Because one of the things that I love to do is sue these idiots on the back end. So you're going to pay for 10 months, the $40 a month. And then I'm going to say to you, hey, Lisa, I want to talk to you in month 11 or month 12, because we're going to check your credit reports. And I can almost guarantee you, they're still going to report that you owed the $800. They're not going to be showing your settlement payment. They're not reducing your balance.
My name is Lisa Gassett. I live in Texas.
Okay.
I just recently moved here 3 years ago. My debt was from when I was living in California from Credit One Bank, but LVNV Funding now owns it. And so it was almost the 4-year mark. It's almost the 4-year mark, I think, in like March, actually, when we go to court. So one day I just opened my door and there's a lady there serving me for my Credit One credit card from LVN Funding.
Got it.
I responded to my deal at the courts. I was told that you're supposed to kind of fight back on it, ask for more validation that if they really own my debt. Because in the paperwork they gave me, it only shows that they bought a bunch of, says accounts, and then also just a statement of what the credit card was spent on.
Right.
So I asked for more information, more validation, a binding contract between both parties. Is the court supposed to send me something back to a response, or is that the only response I get was when I go to court?
Well, that's a great question. So first, quick disclaimer, since you're not in Florida, I'm going to give general advice that you should find applicable and helpful.
Okay.
And Lisa, this also gives me an opportunity to talk more generally about these types of lawsuits, because I think it can apply to other people here watching live today. It happens a lot in a lot of people in this space. So what you're describing is what's called a debt buyer situation, or we call them junk debt buyers.
Right.
LVNV is one of such companies, a huge one. LVNV is owned by a parent company called Resurgent Capital, and they're $1 billion corporation. So think about that. They're spending enough money to buy old debt such that then when they collect it, they're bringing in $1 billion a year of revenue with a B.
Right.
There are others you may heard of, like Midland Credit is another big one, NCM. But those are all junk debt buyers, or they buy what's called portfolios of accounts. So Lisa, you mentioned a couple very important things I want to talk about here with these types of cases. So number one, if it's a first party creditor suing you, it's always a lot more difficult.
Okay.
So you're in a better position than some consumers because you have a debt buyer.
Right.
And so that means at least one time there was allegedly a change of ownership of your debt. You did mention it was Credit One originally.
Right.
But what's crazy, even though it went from Credit One to LVNV, I can almost guarantee there's 3 or 4 more steps behind the scenes. And the hard part for these companies is they have to prove every one of those steps. So what you described as, the documents you're getting back, there's some other things that you're going to want. One is called a forward flow agreement. A forward flow agreement is what's basically the master contract. That's between LVNV and Credit One Bank. Credit One Bank probably sold 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 accounts along with yours at one time, one batch. I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what it looks like when it says they bought accounts. It just says, that sounds like a bunch of them.
Right. And yours is one of them. So sometimes it's like a needle in a haystack. And if you're doing the right thing by fighting back, these things can be won very easily if they're junk debt accounts. And Lisa, what I'd like to do is connect with Mike and Dave after the program, because again, this whole program is about connecting you all to lawyers. If it's me, amazing. I love it to be. We have coverage in many states, or it's going to be one of my, amazing partners. And I've got great partners in Texas. So rest assured, there are good defenses to these cases. like I said, they have to prove the change of ownership the whole way through. There are
Okay.
specific types of documents that you're going to want to either get or ask for. And
Okay.
then another important thing about these junk debt buyer cases is, let's talk numbers. Lisa, I don't want you to tell me any specifics because it's private, but let's just say they're suing you for $5,000, or anyone's being sued for $5,000. You had a $5,000 debt for Credit One Bank, and now it's with LVNV. From my past experience, and I've been doing this going on 14 years, I've seen thousands of these contracts. They pay between 3 and 12% of the original amount to buy your debt. Think of that. 3 and 12%. And it depends on how old the debt is, or
it's almost 4 years. Originally, the credit card was like $400, and now it's up to $832.
Which makes sense because of all the interest and late fees and other things that accrue. So $400 to $800, they probably paid less than $80 for that account.
Yeah.
So what that means is it gives you some leverage to negotiate. And junk debt buyers are always willing to take less than the full amount. In my experience, sometimes they'll take low as like 30% of the debt. Now, on one hand, they look like Santa Claus. Hey, we're giving you a 70% discount. We're the greatest people on earth. Well, pardon my language, but screw you. You paid 3% and now you're charging me 30%. You're going to be on your yacht with that markup.
Right.
So it gives you a lot of leverage. And these types of cases, again, it's very important to understand.
Okay.
Try to fight back. They don't want you to fight back. And Lisa, let me real quick, and I'm going to ask you another thing specific, but just generally speaking, you're doing the right thing because all they want to do is to get you to default. They don't want you to show up to court. They don't want you to fight back. They don't want you to answer because all they want is a default. Then they get everything they're asking for plus more, and they get to garnish either your paycheck or your tax return. So just fighting back is always a good thing. It gives you additional leverage. So Lisa, you're doing the right thing by that. And sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah. I was also asking too, because I also, even though I was served, I don't know if this is valid to do it after you've been served, but I also sent them another letter of validation. And they still send me the same thing, the statement through the resurgent, and then the statement of what you spent on your bill and stuff. They still sent me that. Then later on, I end up sending a deceased insist letter, and they responded to that. Is that considered still a violation or not? If I've been served already?
That's a great question. So being served doesn't stop many things. It doesn't stop their right to keep collecting from you. They can still call, they can still send you things, up until sending a cease and desist, for example, like you just described. But being served and being sued doesn't really stop many other clocks or timelines. The one it does stop is the statute of limitations. So as you mentioned, the debt was originally from California, so it's 4 years. So it does sound like they sued you. They don't have to get their judgment by 4 years. All they have to have done is filed their lawsuit within 4 years. And it sounds like they have done that.
Yes.
So that would be a successful defense that it's past the statute of limitations, but there are plenty of other options in the toolbox to try to defeat them. And let me also say, Lisa, that if you don't defeat them, another strategy is to get onto the lowest settlement that you can, because one of the things that I love to do is sue these idiots on the back end.
Yeah.
So these companies get so greedy and lazy that once you enter into an agreement with them, like everything else goes out the window. And what they often do will credit report erroneous information after the settlement. So in a situation like yours, let's just say, for example, that you negotiate a $400 settlement paid over 10 months. You pay $40 a month for 10 months. That might be something they would absolutely, you should offer that. I would recommend. They might take it. But guess what? So you're going to pay for 10 months, the $40 a month. And then I'm going to say to you, hey, Lisa, I want to talk to you in month 11 or month 12, because we're going to check your credit reports. And I can almost guarantee you, they're still going to report that you owed the $800. They're not going to be showing your settlement payment. They're not reducing your balance. So even if we can't defeat them right away in the defensive case, we might be able to go after them in the long run. So that's a really
Oh.
fun strategy, and we do that all the time. So,
That's
but Lisa,
awesome.
any more specifics? I would say let's connect you with a
Okay.
Texas attorney. But it was a great first question because we got to talk about a lot of things: the junk debt buying industry, some strategies to use, and defending. But let me also say something very important for Lisa and everyone else. Remember when I talked about there's some small circumstances where you do have to pay the attorney. When they're defending you, it's often that case. So if you're being sued by a landlord for eviction, if you're being sued for an old credit card debt, or you're being sued for foreclosure, you do have to pay the attorney's fees, because it's not like the offensive cases where the bad guys get to pay us per the statute. Now, we're incredibly reasonable. We understand you're in this position, but there is always a little bit of skin in the game. And we try to get that back for you anyway, like I said, in the long run. But just keep in mind, if someone's being sued, it doesn't mean that someone's going to represent you for free. Sometimes they will if it's egregious enough. Like, for example, if a case comes to me past the statute of limitations, I don't charge my clients anything, because I know I'm going to win it, and then they're going to have to pay me because I'm going to sue them under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act because they sued someone past the statute of limitations. That's a violation. So anyway.
So is it best I offer a letter of settlement before, or do I, when I show up to court, then offer to do like the $400 for the $40 a month?
That's a great question. And I'm so glad you asked it. You should offer that soon, because the
Okay.
longer it goes and the closer it gets to court, they're going to have to put some time and resources into it.
Okay.
And they're going to be less likely to take a lower amount. So
Okay.
strike while the iron's hot and early.
So just
Another important thing for Lisa and everyone else: if you ever negotiate a settlement, whether that's because you've been sued or not, you just settle a debt with a debt collector, always get it in writing. They will try not to. They don't like to put these in writing because that gives you a lot of proof and leverage, but always get a settlement in writing, whether that's you're settling a lawsuit or you're settling a debt with a debt collector on the phone or via email.
So do I call in on that, or do I send them a letter certified and this is what I could do?
Call first.
Okay.
You call, and then if you do, and another thing, let's talk about strategies here.
Okay.
Never started offering 50%.
Okay.
Always start offering like 10%.
Okay.
Because remember, at 10%, they might either be breaking even or just making a little bit of money. They're never going to take 10%, but you just want to start lower.
Okay.
Then they're going to offer, we'll knock off 10%. You're going to say, well, I can't pay 90%. I can pay 20%. And then maybe you somewhere in the middle. But that's why it's always better on the phone. You can have a couple of quick phone calls. Letters just take too long and they get lost.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you calling in.
Yes, thank you so much. You guys, I'll enjoy the rest of your guys' chats. Thanks.
All right.